Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I'm Frank Capello.
And I'm Rivka Rivera. And Frank, it's been a fun week. We got to see each other a few times. We had a few events. We did Hot Labor Summer event with Chris Smalls and Steven Donziger, put on by friend of the pod, Devin Young, and Little Secret LA. And it was so fun. It was so amazing. We were promised a party and we got one. And there was just such good vibes, so much solidarity and excitement for the movement. And they're touring. This was the first of the tour. So they are, I don't have in front of me exactly where they're headed, but everyone listening should definitely check it out because they'll be coming to a city near you. I think they're going to be back in LA soon.
Yeah, I know they're heading like LA, Detroit, Atlanta, a couple
Colorado?
other cities. Denver, yeah.
Denver,
yeah. Yeah, definitely worth checking out. And we brought a couple of friends who, you know, didn't really know Chris and Steven, didn't really know their story. And they were just like blown away by not only them speaking, but like you were saying, the vibe, just like the overall energy of the event. Because it's like, it's a very untraditional political event in that it feels like a party. It's not just like boring ass, like people just talking at you. So kudos to Devin and Little Secret LA for like that formula that she figured out. It absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
So
it was hosted by Matthew Donovan of Neoliberal Hell podcast, and hopefully we'll have Matthew on our podcast. It was great to meet. Like there were just so many people there, and it was just really, really great to meet people that you've been learning from and listening to, and share in that night. So we had a good time. Check it out.
Rivka, you did some like field reporting this past week. You joined the picket lines with the SAG-AFTRA union with the actors. Tell us what it was like.
It was so great. I was gonna talk to more people. I ended up just doing a lot of yelling because I love that. The best part is when, the best part was really having like truck drivers and people in taxis and people in cars who were passing by and honking their horns, and they get it because it really just felt like this is a moment of, people get it. This is a moment for labor. This is a moment for workers. I think we're going to be out. I think we're out there every day. So it's the beginning. Like, I mentioned before, vocal technique. Gotta be sustained. So we'll see what happens. I know you and I were talking about going out and actually like talking to people. This was me just getting out there like,
yeah, we're hoping to join the picket lines one day and talk to some people and record the interviews and, maybe put that up as a special episode. So, hopefully we'll get to do that in the next few weeks. Sort of along the same lines of what's going on with the SAG-AFTRA strike now that they've joined the writers. I wanted to talk to you about this piece that I read in Entertainment Weekly about SAG-AFTRA strike waivers for some film productions. So, one of the big things with the actors now joining the strike is that virtually all film and TV productions have been shut down. When the writers went on strike, that pretty much only stopped productions that hadn't yet been completed on the writing side. So anything that still required any sort of rewrites or reshoots. But if it was, productions where like the script was done, whatever, those could continue because, technically the writer's job is done at that point. Now that the actors have joined, that means that like you can't shoot things without actors, So it means that pretty much all of the productions have shut down except for some independent productions. So this is from Entertainment Weekly, quote, 45 truly independent productions have now been granted strike exemptions under the interim agreement, which allows members of the Screen Actors Guild to continue shooting and appear in certain productions without violating the terms of the strike. So this is sanctioned by the Guild. This is not, in their eyes, scabbing. But the kind of like the big headline here is like, yeah, they might be independent movies in that their producers aren't covered by the AMPTP, but these are productions still with huge stars like Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, Mark Wahlberg, Sigourney Weaver, and many, many others. So they get to continue working and they get to continue making movies. So
Yeah, I have feelings.
yeah, you go first.
I have strong feelings, and I will speak strongly in draft because I could fully be wrong. But my strong feeling, especially because I've already said a different opinion today, and now thinking about it, I'm changing my mind. Because I was talking to my neighbor earlier, and I was using this as an example of like why our demands are not ridiculous. Like there is the argument of like, well, if A24 can do it, Disney can do it. Like, come on. But then at the same time, like I was just really disturbed by the usage of truly independent films. Like that is just that's not what I would call. I would not describe A24 as truly independent. I guess I'm thinking about like when independent film was independent film. Again, you have these major stars, names. I think it's fucked up for the public to see like these major stars working and shooting. I don't think they're going to understand the difference because frankly, like actually what is it? A24 is not truly independent. Like to me, I think about truly independent as like, yes, you can go shoot your short film with your very low, what they call an ultra low budget. I don't think those projects that people are working on should be necessarily stopped right now. If you've worked really hard and crowdfunded and you have raised the funds to go shoot your ultra low project, if you're A24, like that doesn't feel like solidarity to me. I could be wrong, again, speaking in draft, but like the idea that it's like, but this is an independent project. I'm like, with Anne Hathaway, fuck off.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean no name? Like, yes, up and coming, rising star. Who else was on
Just trying to get
list?
her foot through the door, Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, like I saw someone else tweet. They're like, how about you take all of the money that if you're really gonna do it, like, why don't all of you stars? Oh, you know this no name Matthew McConaughey. Ever heard of him? Take all of these like your profits then, and maybe pool them together and put them in a fund for the actors who are on strike. Like, it just to me is like, you're going to be making money. You are going to be making money in this moment in time when all of these working class actors are not. Go fuck off. Wow, I have very strong feelings. I'm angry now. Again.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Speaking in draft, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong.
We should also just provide a little context about what I guess constitutes an independent movie. I'm pretty sure, as far as
not Matthew McConaughey. I'm
pretty sure the definition is just a movie that is financed outside of the regular studio system.
Sure.
So like how you're saying, like if A24 itself or it finds some independent financiers that put up the money to produce a movie, that's technically an independent movie because it wasn't produced by 20th Century Fox or Paramount or one of the big ones.
And I do think that they, not only are they truly independent, I didn't see it in this article, but I did, and I could be wrong, but I think part of it was that they actually agreed to meet the demands.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Which, great, cool, but also like,
cool.
Chill, wait, hold off. Hold off, bro.
My feelings are that, like, obviously having all of the actors not working creates a huge pressure point for the studios, the networks, and the streamers. But not having the work of A-list actors creates the greatest pressure point. So it kind of flies in the face of the concept of solidarity if the people whose labor is, quote unquote, the most valuable. I'm not actually saying that like the labor of Anne Hathaway is more valuable than you, Rivka, as an actor. But
you better not be.
No, I'm not. I would never. But within the way our stupid capitalist studio network system is, A-listers are considered more valuable, quote unquote, valuable by the producers. So for them to not withhold their labor I feel like sets the strike back a little bit. I mean, obviously this is only a handful of A-listers, so there are still a lot of A-listers that aren't working. Like we, mentioned last episode, the cast of Oppenheimer walks off of the premiere.
But it speaks to the issue of class. It's like this issue of class. And you're like, so you're going to get a photo op saying you support this, but then get this, like, out to go work? No. And of course, not everyone working on those films is necessarily going to be, there are obviously other working class actors working and supporting those actors who are going to get to work on those sets. But a lot of this is, we've talked about, like, what is the role of, like, the storytelling in a moment like this? The general public does play a big part, and that's, like, they're not going to understand the differences in that. It's wishy-washy.
No, and if this is a loophole that movies can get around, you know, who's to say that, like, some producer isn't going to try to game the system and be like, all right, well, this movie that was supposed to be produced with Paramount, I'm actually going to now take over here to this, quote, independent production company just to get it done. You know, like, if these loopholes exist, people are going to exploit them to continue these productions. So yeah, it's a bummer. Like, it sucks because I don't want to give like the A-listers more credit than they're due, but like within this economic system, the withholding of their labor specifically creates the highest pressure point on the producers. So like the longer that this is able to drag out, and some productions are still able to sneak through the cracks, and you know, it's not just like every actor is off the table, like that would create the most pressure. That would help resolve this the fastest. So
maybe they will if they pool the resources and make a statement. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe they can figure it out. I think they're just so isolated from, like, you know, they like to be like, well, we're all actors, and like ignore the fact that, like, they're very isolated from the reality of what's happening for most working actors. And I think that was part of maybe what happened with Fran. Like, through this process, like, not everyone was on the nanny.
Yeah.
Really quickly, that some I guess good news. I didn't realize that was going to get me so angry, but I wanted to bring this up, that I saw the heiress Abigail Disney, speaking of Disney, was arrested for her part in a protest, climate protest, where she chained herself in front of Hampton's airport to protest billionaires spewing greenhouse gases, you know, using their personal planes to get to their beach homes.
Personal planes?
What is it called?
A private jet. I think those are called malaprompts. Your malaprompts are some of my favorites.
What's a malaprompt? Like when you make up the thing?
Yeah, when you like say the name of a thing, or like the title of a thing incorrectly. So like, yeah, you turn private jet into personal planes.
Especially when I'm tired. I was teaching earlier today, and I was like, what is the name of this? It was a column, I found out later. Couldn't name it. So I was like, the pillar in the room, the pillar at the center. Yes, your personal planes. Well, I just think that's like badass, because she's I guess a good Disney, you know, and she's angry and speaking of, well, I guess this relates to our friends, like she recognizes her position of class and therefore power, and is using it to piss off those billionaires, to put her body on the line, get arrested because these fucking personal planes, along with a lot of other amazing, brave protesters who also got arrested. And I just saw some clips from like some of the people who were on those personal planes. There was like one clip of this guy who goes up to a protester, and he's like, he thinks he's going to make this great point. So he's like, you know, there's a battery in your megaphone. Like, he's like, you too are exactly. And they go, oh, really? Thank you so much. Yeah, that's it. You got me, sir. The equivalent of your personal plane is that of a megaphone. Is just, so they did some good work there. But yes, great.
It's great. I didn't know about this. Yeah, I like that too. We love a class traitor. We love when it happens.
Yeah, I think she's been an activist for a while, but fuck those people's personal planes.
All right, well, we should probably get to our conversation for today about Robocop. But before we do, just want to let you all know that this podcast is produced by the two of us.
We perform all of the necessary labor to make this show happen.
And as we're trying to practice our anti-capitalist values, we will not be selling ads on this show. We rely completely on community support to keep the show going. So if you're able to support us, please consider subscribing to our Patreon.
For just $5 a month, you get access to our entire back catalog of premium episodes, and you'll be directly supporting this show. You can also leave us a one-time contribution in our tip jar, and you can find all of those links in the episode description in your podcast player or by going to mvcpod.com.
You can also help us out for free by leaving a rating and review for this show on your podcast player. It only takes a few seconds, and it is very helpful in boosting the algorithm and getting this show in front of more people, so we really appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with our conversation about Robocop with Mike Benner. All right, we are so excited today to be joined by Mike Benner. Mike is a writer, producer, and podcaster based out of Los Angeles. He's written for TV shows like Bob's Burgers, Squidbillies, Gravity Falls, and more. He recently wrapped season 1 as a showrunner on an upcoming adult animated series, and his horror comedy feature, Destroy All Neighbors, goes into production this summer, starring Alex Winter and Jonah Ray. He's also the co-host and producer of Airbuds, a pretty popular comedy basketball podcast. Beyond all of that, he loves skateboarding, hip-hop music, good food, and talking shit with his friends, who we are. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
I told you texted me a little bit ago asking for a bio, and I just was like, I cringed at the thought, and I gave you just the super long bio that like my manager sends out, and I was like, cut something out of this. I don't know what to do. I hate talking about myself. And then you read the whole thing.
No, I cut quite a bit
I'm
out.
so glad you read the whole thing because, Mike, I did not know that you loved skateboarding.
Oh yeah, I'm
so learn new things all the time.
Being a skateboarder ties directly into my thoughts and feelings about the movie we're talking about today. Honestly, it's the origin story of my hatred for police.
Oh, that makes sense. As like a little shithead kid on the tough streets of Philadelphia. This is what I'm assuming. Mike, before we get into that conversation, you are, as we mentioned, a writer, a TV and feature writer. You are a member of the Writers Guild of America, which is still on strike. We're recording this late May. So what has your experience with the strike been so far? What are your thoughts on what the Guild is asking for? What are your thoughts on the studios and the networks and the streamers?
Love the studios. They're great. No, honestly, I feel like I'm a bit of some people might call me a pessimist. I consider myself a realist. And you can go back to an old episode of Airbuds back from 2019 when the Disney and 20th Century Fox merger went through. And that's a podcast about basketball, but we talk about a lot of other things. And I literally like everything that is happening now at that moment. I was like, the fact that the media companies are all kind of like becoming one is bad for labor up and down the cast list, like, or the credits. And so I can't say I'm surprised that we're here now or that we've been abused by the studios, us writers. I'm confident that the writers are winning the PR war right now because it is kind of we're just asking for like such a fucking small portion of the money they make in order to pay rent for most middle class writers, and their response is no, we want to replace you with ChatGPT. So like I feel like the strike's going to go on for a while, but I think it's ultimately going to end up in the writers' favor a little bit, which is good for all the unions, all the labor that goes into making movies and television.
Absolutely.
Writers are kind of the canary in the coal mine right now. So what happens with our deal is going to have ramifications with everybody's deals.
You know, over the weekend, I was meeting up with a friend in the park, and someone there worked for one of the big streamers. I'm not going to say which one, but they were kind of pushing the company line. They were saying, you know, if we give the writers what they want, then we're not going to have money for production, so there's going to be less jobs, and we're already not profitable. So where does this money even come from? Like, what they're asking for, we don't have the money to even give them. So, like, we can't do anything. And my response was, well, it sounds like your business model needs to change. It sounds like if you're not able to pay writers what they've historically been paid, it sounds like you don't have a sustainable business model. And they were like, yeah, I guess so. It was a little awkward, but yeah, it was surprising because the first person that I encountered personally that was like, actually, the writers are asking for too much.
How strange.
Frank, what does Ted Sarandos eat at a picnic in the park with you?
Yeah.
Oh, he brought all of his own stuff. It was all from Erewhon. He just
I think it's really funny. the streamers and the studios, on the one hand, they're on calls with their shareholders, bragging about record profits and all the money they're making and why people should invest more and more in them. And then on the other hand, they're going to the writers and saying, we're broke. We can't afford to pay you guys. We're sorry. Like, which is it? Are you doing better than ever, or are you broke as hell? I suspect it is the former and not the latter. I think the Writers Guild's the demands that they came to the table with add up to about $460 million total, and that would just kind of help get writers more equitable residuals and blah blah blah. Everything. But I saw a stat that it's estimated that the studios in the 18, I guess it's probably about 20 days at this point, not to date the podcast, of the writer's strike, they've lost over $550 million. So like if they had just agreed to the basic terms that the Writers Guild came to the table with day one, they would have, saved themselves more than $500 million. So it's all about power. It's all about, if they give us what we're asking for, then they have to admit that they can give everybody what they deserve, and they don't want to do that.
Exactly, like you were saying, this, we've said this before, it's not only setting precedent for entertainment unions, it's setting precedent for workers across the country and worldwide, and so it's a really important moment for everyone. And you said ChatGPT, so I'm going to use that to segue into the film that you chose, because we did watch the 1987 film Robocop, and we are going to talk about that today. This film was directed by Paul Verhoeven, written by Edward Neumeier, Michael Miner, and it stars Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Ronnie Cox, Kurtwood Smith, and Miguel Ferrer. The budget was $13 million, and it grossed $53 million worldwide. This film is set in a dystopic and crime-ridden Detroit, where police officer Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller, is murdered by a crime syndicate led by the maniacal Clarence Bowdicker, played by Kurtwood Smith. But after his death, his body is claimed by the Omni Consumer Products Corporation, which transforms him into a powerful crime-fighting cyborg called Robocop. But as Murphy's submerged memories start resurfacing, Robocop embarks on a mission to find his murderers and the Omni corporate executive who conspired with them. So we've already been talking about it. This is quite relevant. But give us a little bit more historical context, Frank.
You got it, Rivka. So this film was released on July 17th, 1987. So this is the tail end of the Reagan era. In January, Pennsylvania's state treasurer Bud Dwyer commits suicide by shooting himself during a live press conference.
Hell yeah. One of the greatest moments in TV history.
Wow.
You, Mike. It's already off the rails. In March, Ronald Reagan addresses the American people on the Iran-Contra scandal, acknowledging that his negotiations with Iran had deteriorated into an arms for hostages deal. In April, the Fox network makes its primetime debut. In May, U.S. Senator Gary Hart drops out of the running of the 1988 Democratic presidential primary amid allegations of an extramarital affair. And in June, during a visit to Berlin, President Ronald Reagan challenges Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall. So that is what is happening when Robocop is released. So, Mike, I know that this is one of your favorite movies, but why did you choose it for us to watch on this podcast?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of what you would call a police abolitionist. I don't believe our current system of policing works, and it never really has. And I think this movie is, at the time especially, like pretty prescient satire of like where policing was heading. And I think it's also a very complicated movie in terms, because it's kind of at once both anti-cop and pro-cop. It is also kind of a pro-labor movie, but it's like that's represented by the police union, which, as we know in real life, police unions are anti-labor. So it's just like very interesting piece of kind of like schlocky but like brilliant satire of American culture. Paul Verhoeven is a madman, and this is like his kind of like vision of what he saw America as.
Because he is a Dutch filmmaker. He's not American. Well, this was my first time seeing RoboCop, which is surprising. I can't believe I'd gone this long. And I agree with everything you were saying. I thought it's satire about the merger of corporate power and state violence was incredibly prescient and spot on. Specifically in how the Omni Consumer Products Corporation has infiltrated almost every sector of this future dystopian. And I also agree with you that it does end up being a little pro-cop, or not even a little. It ends up being pro-cop, reflected sort of through the main character of Alex Murphy / Robocop.
But I think in a way, the way that it ends up being pro-cop, and maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves, like the Murphy Robocop, his journey is recapturing his humanity that he had before he became a cop.
Sure.
And I think in a way, it's like that's telling of what Paul Verhoeven thought of police, was that like that you trade in your humanity in order to become a cop, and like the exchange of authority and a weapon, you give up your kind of what makes you a human.
No, I mean, just to your point, Mike, like in some ways that was really complicated for me as well, to be like, is that a pro or anti-cop question being put forth? Because was how I perceived it. And I don't know, it was definitely anti-system in some ways, and then in others it had this classic like, this one person is like the bad apple human at the top of the making all things bad. So it was hard to, it wasn't really making a statement about this, although in some ways it was about the system itself being an issue. But I agree with you. What I loved about it was like so clearly about power, even more than like they talk about money, but this was about just straight power. And I think often when we have these conversations about capitalism, it can get confused about, not confused, but that the money is the power and the power is the money. And that's one and the same when it comes to oppression. And here it was very much about the power. This was also my first time seeing it. And I was surprised to find that Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't in this movie. I really thought he would be. I was
Do you know
so
which
confused.
Schwarzenegger movie you thought this was?
The one where he's a robot.
Terminator 2, Terminator 3.
I
Terminator
suppose
4.
I suppose one of those, yeah. But I also was like, oh, he also did RoboCop. I think he like in my head he was like the Rock of like of
playing
robot.
robots
Yeah.
in the 80s.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
not. I mean, I was like, who's this guy? I've never seen this guy before.
I do
liked
think
him.
there's an element of like the Terminator was like the WWF, and then like RoboCop was like the WCW, just kind of like the off-brand version of like.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think Terminator was like the kind of the elite robot movie, and then RoboCop was kind of the the rough around the edges kind of schlocky one.
Yeah, I liked the schlockiness of it. I think that was what I was, because I was expecting, I guess, Terminator, and I was expecting something a little more Hollywood and polished. I really appreciated, like, it was just so grotesque and vulgar and so much more satire than I expected. I loved the cinematography and the point of view, and that, like, for so much of the film, we are engaging with it from the point of view of, like, surveillance. So, like, I just felt so paranoid the whole time because so much of the shots were from either the POV of RoboCop or like inside machinery. There was like always the joy of these films of seeing like what we think technology is going to be, and like how it always becomes more slick, but the same concept is there. So I was enjoying a lot of that. And then I think just mostly I was watching this through the eyes of like a New Yorker who, Mayor Adams just released the Digidog robot. In fact,
God.
He actually made the announcement. This was on April 11th. He said, "Digidog is out of the pound." So that's a Mayor Adams
Fucking
quote.
asshole.
So and we'll get more into the details of it, but I was just like, well, this is exactly the technology coming to a street near you.
Wait, is Digidog now on the street? Like, is he on the beat right now, or
I don't.
Like,
I mean, I
soon?
wouldn't be surprised. But like, it was Digidog was. The reference to being out of the pound was like, I think Digidog, and they were wanting to do this, and there was like in 2021 they wanted to do it, and there was a lot of protests, and so now he's back. He's out of the pound.
This is how little they think about like what they say. Like, so isn't the pound kind of like the jail for dogs? Like, why was Digidog in the pound? What did Digidog do wrong, Eric Adams?
Yeah, really poor metaphor, Eric Adams.
And
This
it's
is-
really, I mean, just watching this, the whole, like, the lines that they say from, like, in this film when they're referencing the reason for the robots and, like, the Dick Jones talking about the Ed 209. And like they had a line where they're like, this is the end of crime in old Detroit is going to be happening in 30 days. And like, it's just, you could take Mayor Adams' lines and line them up with this script. And they're almost, I mean, it's hard when you're living in the satire to be like, how do you satire anymore? You know?
Unlike like Terminator, which I do think has a lot of things to say about, you know, corporate power over the tech sector and AI and all of that. I do feel like the satire in this is way, way more like just from the top, like the first moment you meet the Omni Consumer Products Corporation in the boardroom, the old man, the CEO is like, it's never been a better time for corporate growth in the country, although we are plagued with crime. You see that parallel today where it's just like, corporate power and wealth has become so concentrated, and the disinvestment from communities and from social services has just left us in this world where it's like people at the top making more and more money, getting more and more nice things, but everyone else fucking having to live in poverty or, you know, turn to a life of crime. I want to play one real quick clip from that board meeting where they kind of lay out how they are privatizing everything, that this is like really also a story about privatization.
Take a close look at the track record of this company, and you'll see that we have gambled in markets traditionally regarded as non-profit. Hospitals, prisons, space exploration. I say good business is where you find it. As you know, we've entered into a contract with the city to run local law enforcement. But at Security Concepts, we believe an efficient police force is only part of the solution. No, we need something more. We need a 24-hour-a-day police officer, a cop who doesn't need to eat or sleep, a cop with superior firepower and the reflexes to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we have today.
I mean, that's just Elon Musk talking right there, right?
Sure.
Like, just in case people have not watched the movie and are like, don't believe it's just how sharp and to the point the satire is. I want to take it even one step further, Frank. The very first shot of the movie is a fake newsreel.
Oh, yeah.
Of just like these newscasters cheerily delivering the bleakest possible fucking news. And like the Star Wars defense lasers accidentally destroying Santa Barbara, and like a president vomiting on a spaceship because he like it's just it's this movie really is kind of so on the nose with it. Hearing that clip, I'm just like, yeah, this movie's the most on the nose thing ever, and I think it's kind of awesome because of that.
To speak to that news clip, I'm blown away. I was like, this is the first thing you're seeing. The anchors say, "You give us 3 minutes, we'll give you the world," and then they, well, you said, give this like cheery delivery of this bleak news. They squeeze in an ad for a new robotic heart, and then they deliver more news, and then they rap. And I paused it, and it was 3 minutes exactly into the film.
Wow.
I was like, that's amazing.
Similarly, I loved that throughout it has the fake commercials as well. And there's a family that's playing sort of like a battleship, but it's called Nukem. And it's just get them before they get you. Like, and I just remember as a kid, maybe this was subconsciously just growing. I thought fake commercials were the funniest thing. I did a play. Like, I remember my middle school play. I didn't get the lead. I was so bummed, but it was also because the person who got the lead, her family gave a lot of money to the school. But whatever. I'm not bitter about it.
And what's your Instagram handle that we can go comment on?
Well, she's not in the biz anymore, so.
Should have worked harder.
Well, you should have worked harder. What I was very excited about was that I got cast in like a fake Jazzercise commercial, and I just thought that was the funnest thing. So these fake commercials are always just the highest art form to me. So this movie had me at the fake commercials.
Yeah, fake advertisements, fake sitcoms. There's like a running gag that like the people in this world are watching sitcoms that are just like the dumbest, basest, I would call it like distraction comedy. It's like all just like this little bald guy like sticking his face into women's chests and then like throwing pies at one another. It's just like, this is what the dumbest possible version of TV could be.
It is like literally Idiocracy like stole this bit with the like Ow My Nuts show that everybody's obsessed with. Like
That's right.
it's because the sitcom throughout the movie probably like 4 or 5 times everybody in the movie is watching this show. Yeah, where it's a little bald man smashing cakes into women's breasts and then saying, "I'd buy that for $1."
Yes. And I think what's so brilliant about it is that it's really making a statement about the connection between media, the surveillance state, and policing. And it's not like this is just something that's like there externally, like it's telling us how to watch this world. And then we see so much of like the ads and the mentality of the ads and the sexism in the ads and all of that being mirrored in the world that Robocop is policing and being mirrored in the world, the way that people aren't like, no one's quite a real, like, you know what I mean? You're never really quite let into anyone's like real quote unquote life. Everything is pretty much seen through like work environment, through this lens. But like it's just amazing how you see that mirrored and how you get this feeling that like there is not much private space left in this world at all. Like, so I think it's intentional that we don't see much private space. Everything has become part of work, and everything is being viewed. Like even when the robot goes back to see his old home, and I loved this little touch. There was a robot real estate agent who was, everything's just being viewed, which is what's terrifying about these on top of a lot of things that are terrifying about having police robots in New York, but like we're not starting at the place of like they're gonna just be blasting off, although I'm sure that's coming soon. The fact is they're just gonna be surveilling 24/7, and I think in one of the articles I read, Adams was like, yeah, no, we're not yet gonna use like face recognition, but like, yeah, you are, yeah, like, but they're like, but we shall, but just not like today, maybe tomorrow, but like we're all going to be understood, so I thought this film got that so right, and I had anxiety watching it just because it was really good filmmaking, that it was subtle but it was constantly there.
I like that Eric Adams thinks like that, so like we're not going to do it, we are going to, but we're not doing it yet. Like that's like me being like, Frank, I'm not going to punch you in the face, I'm going to do it on Wednesday. But like, how is that any better? Telling us that they were going to do it. Just do it. We are already doing it.
Digidog is out of the pound.
His hypocrisy really gets to me. I think it was like National Teachers Day a couple weeks ago, and he did a big tweet thread that are just like, a shout out to all the teachers, some of the most important public servants that we have. Like everyone loves their teachers. Teachers are the lifeblood, teaching, New York's children. It's like, motherfucker, you cut the public education budget. Like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, you love teachers so much. Name 5 teachers, Eric Adams.
One thing I really appreciated about this movie was the violence.
Yes.
It is incredibly violent. It is incredibly graphic. And unlike some action movies that have just like graphic over the top violence, this felt intentional. This felt like Verhoeven saying to the audience, like, this is what happens when a police officer just like absolutely unloads an entire clip into your body. This is what happens when the robot that's supposed to protect you malfunctions and chooses to just absolutely light you up in the middle of a board meeting. And I mean, like, the murder of Alex Murphy is incredibly violent. Like it feels like it's really putting the violence front and center, saying like, this is what happens. This is what happens within the policing system in this country. So yeah, that was just something that jumped out to me.
It's also presented like, I like what you said. Like Verhoeven is almost challenging the audience to be like, this is what you want. Like, this is what you like. Like, okay, I'm going to give it to you. And then presents it with like a wink almost. Like when Alex Murphy, Kurtwood Smith, shoots his hand off. He shoots his hand and the hand explodes into like a gooey, bloody mess. And then Kurtwood Smith, he might as well have like turned to the camera and winked and said, give him a hand. Like there's just like, it's so campy in a way that I like as well.
Yeah, because I think it makes some of the like the harder edges of the satire a little bit more like palatable by keeping it more in that like schlocky vein that we're talking about.
It was just straight gory, and like it was also, to your point, Frank, just like, this is what gun, when you see something shot and it's just a clean, I think you so often see it and it's just like a clean shot through and you're like, well, that wasn't so bad. Like, this was not a second of this was it not so bad. It was all so painful and played very realistically and still over the top, which is a very cool note to hit.
Yeah, especially when it comes from the cops, because in our real world, when you hear that an unarmed person was shot 20 plus times by the police, you don't really have I personally, I don't have like a conception of what that looks or feels like in my head. It's just sort of like, it's hard to imagine. And this movie is really like, well, no, this is what it looks like when a cop shoots you 20 times. This is what it does to your body, which it was very jarring.
Would it help you understand it more if we called the shooting an officer-involved shooting rather than the cops shot them?
That would help. That would make me feel a lot better about it. And actually, it's almost like the cop didn't even do anything.
Exactly.
I wanted to go to the conversation about Murphy and about Murphy's arc, because I know we started sort of talking about it, and that's where I was the most, I didn't know where it was really interesting. I didn't know where I landed. The message that I got was about the dehumanization of being a police officer, of becoming a robot and having to, what are the effects of remembering who you are or who you were when you're sort of caught in this, the mechanisms, in the claws of power, and you are just a robot in this world taking orders. I think it would have had a very different journey and effect if, like, at the end, upon remembering, Robocop is like quits, it's like, fuck this, that was not what happened. Like, that would be my choice as a director and producer if I'm like, this is the message. But I'm curious, because I know you started talking about that, Mike, your thoughts on that.
I think Murphy as a character is a bit of a cipher, and I think intentionally so. We don't really know much about him. We know he loves his wife and kid, which makes it weird how he and Nancy Allen are kind of flirting when they first become partners. It's like you're talking about how much you love your wife and kid, but also like you clearly want to fuck Nancy Allen. Like, what's going on here? But his like one personality trait that we get to really see, and his reason for wanting to be a cop really before he becomes Robocop, is that his kid thinks it's cool when he twirls his gun around and shoots it. And so you get this idea that like this guy is not necessarily, he's not in it because he wants to serve his community. He's in it because he wants to play cowboy. And then he gets obviously murdered to death by Kurtwood Smith and gang, and becomes Robocop, and he kind of loses all kind of sense of humanity and his memories and everything. But the one thing he retains at the end, when he kills the CEO of Omni, he twirls the gun again and puts it in his holster, and he calls himself Murphy. And you get the sense that like, oh, like we were hoping he was going to recapture his humanity, but the part of the humanity he captured was the cowboy thing. So it's like policing will, no matter what a cop is put through, like that authority and the fact that you have a gun and you have the power to, basically ruin anyone's life that you want to, you're just playing cowboy. Like I don't know. So I think in that sense, I can interpret it as like, it's not like a win for Robocop. It's like an indictment on police that like, no matter, even if we designed the perfect fucking robot to go out there and patrol the streets, which by the way, we can get into how Robocop polices, which is like a straight up atrocity, what he does. But like, no matter if we design the perfect robot, like the police system is still flawed. It's always going to be little boys playing cowboy and wanting to exert power over people that are powerless.
So that's interesting, because Murphy read to me like the film was saying that Murphy is the one good cop, the quote unquote good cop. As our lead character, you're led to believe that he has like this integrity. When him and Nancy Allen, show up at the stash house, he's like ready to go in and risk his life to get the bad guys. So you get the sense that he is dedicated to law enforcement. He's dedicated to, I guess being as good of a cop as possible. So that's kind of where it felt like even after he becomes Robocop and then he, reclaims the sense of who he is, it did kind of feel like the movie was saying, there are good cops, and we need more Alex Murphys. Like if we had an Alex Murphy that became a RoboCop, then we would be in a good position. Although I do think the sharpest critique is the idea of like police militarization and the way that like again the corporate merger of state violence and the way that the answer to most of these questions is to just up the weaponry, to go even higher, more advanced weaponry to rein in crime. That felt like where the critique landed, but I felt like with Murphy specifically, they were like, well, at least he was the good cop,
Well, it's interesting because producers were worried about how police would take Murphy. They thought it would be offensive, and the opposite happened, that it kind of became this like heroic figure. There was a lot of there was a lot of joy. Joy's not the word I was looking for. That's the word that's coming to mind. Like pride. Pride is the word.
A lot of cops in the 80s being like, I feel seen.
This is also this is up there with like The Punisher in terms of like pieces of pop culture that have been so widely misinterpreted and and embraced by the people which it is critiquing. Like RoboCop is, Matrix as well. Yeah, like it's just, this is like an all-timer in terms of like people missing the point.
And Mike, also what you mentioned at the beginning about this is that the movie also touches on the labor aspect, because like when we arrive in Detroit, we arrive at the precinct, we get the sense that the city is obviously overridden with violent crime. Cops are being killed every single day, and the movie portrays them as trying their best within a very, very violent and broken system. And it, I think, shows like sympathy for those police officers in that situation, and it sort of paints Omni, the corporation. Omni is now also like running the precinct. It paints them as the bad guys, so it almost kind of, it felt to me like the movie was saying like, oh no, the police are trying to be decent civil servants in an impossible situation, and it's really just the corporate overlords who are the ones that are making, one, the crime bad, and two, their jobs more difficult. And then there is that moment where they're like going to go on strike.
Which is interesting because I don't think they can't strike, right? Is my understanding.
They do go on strike in the movie.
They do,
But I mean in like now.
End, we don't really see...
No, police are legally not allowed to go on strike.
I do have a very undercooked take as it relates to the WGA strike. And it pains me to say this, but I think the police union and RoboCop are the WGA. Omni is the AMPTP, and RoboCop is ChatGPT. And the Omni wants to replace the police officers with this AI robots, and the police officers they just don't want to get shot to death. Just like us writers too.
Mm-hmm.
I do think like the labor aspect, it's definitely like a pro-labor movie. The whole police union striking thing is a little undercooked in the movie. Like we don't even really know what they're striking for other than
not getting murdered.
And I'm just like, well, that doesn't seem like a reason to strike.
I think you're onto something. It's hinted at because there was that scene where RoboCop comes in and is like, look at my gun knowledge, shot practice. What is it called?
Yeah, at shot practice.
Shot practice. Yeah, at the firing range.
Yeah, firing range, shot practice.
So RoboCop is at shot practice.
RoboCop is at shot practice with all the other cops who are at shot practice, and they're all like, "Whoa!" Because
he's at rehearsal.
He's at rehearsal. And he just destroys the thing. Is just like teared down at the end of his shot practice. And one of the cops, he's like, "This guy is really good." He's like, "He's not a guy, he's a machine." They're like, "What are they gonna do? Replace us?" So I think you're correct. They're like, that to me was okay. So they're hinting at like the strike is literally fear of ChatGPT. Like these guys are gonna come in and take all our jobs. But then it gets a little lost.
It's definitely, I wonder if there is a version of the script where they talk more about the union. It does feel like a big thing. We're introduced to it pretty early on in the movie. It gets a lot of play early on, and then you kind of forget about it until the end when Nancy Allen is like, "Nobody showed up for work today. I guess the strike is on." And you're just like, oh, okay, I guess I forgot about the strike. But yeah.
It's also, I don't know really when police unions became sort of like the force in municipal politics that they have become, but this movie really misses the mark in terms of like what police unions actually are, which are basically like, I don't know, like little mafias,
crime syndicates. Yeah, Yeah, the casting was interesting to me because the bad guys could have equally like been like I kind of love that. Like they all kind of had like a same look and vibe, and like Bodecker could have been I guess he was working with Omni OCP people, but like they all kind of looked like they could have walked out of the same room, like the same corporate boardroom, and like I think that was probably intentional as well.
Verhoeven's really great at casting like very interesting looking actors. Kurtwood Smith being one of them.
And he's fucking
Peter
brilliant
Weller as well.
He's so good in it.
He's so good. I had never I'm a big That 70s Show fan. I did not know that Kurtwood Smith was the bad guy in Robocop. I would have seen it way sooner. And he's completely unlike his character in That 70s Show. He's like a
unhinged
live
in this
wire.
movie. Yeah, it's great. He's
The
incredible in it.
choices?
He's having so much fun. Yeah.
He puts his finger. For people who are going to watch this, just look out for this moment. He makes a choice to put his fingers in this man's wine glass and then pulls it out and smells it. I said, give this man an Academy Award. We'll probably give him an award later, but I just thought that choice was fucking brilliant. I was like, I want to be on set with this man. As he like, it was just like acting wise, you're like, these are such great choices. It gave me a lot of like Dr. Strangelove vibes. Like it was beautiful.
I rewatched the movie for the first time in a long time a couple weeks ago when you guys first booked me, and I forgot about that moment. And when I saw it, I didn't know like whether to be like horrified or like I was horny. Like I had like I just was like, what the fuck did he just put his fingers inside this man's wine and then like licked it. And then the moment when he takes the pin out of the grenade by using his tongue, it's just like
so
this guy
good.
is insane. And
I'll tell
I
you
love
what,
him in it.
Mike, watch out. Next time I see you for drinks, cover your glasses.
Yeah. Put a coaster on top of my cup.
I actually did make a note about like Verhoeven's homoeroticism, which is a thing that runs through some of his movies. I know there's like Starship Troopers has some of that similar, like just a bunch of like aggro dudes shirtless being really physical with one another, especially in this movie in the bathroom scene with Dick Jones and Bob Morton.
Oh yeah, I love that scene too.
It's so horny. It's like these two dudes threatening each other's livelihoods, but they're like about to kiss. And
so horny.
And he really captures sort of like, I don't know, it kind of feels like he's boiling everything down to just like this male like aggression, this like male sexual aggression that men have with one another. And like you could sort of read that as like, yeah, that's why we have all of the problems in the world, because there's just like a couple of powerful men who are all just like trying to dick each other and like be the horniest, angriest guy.
I think that's definitely like the horny tone is intentional. And there's also like a subtle thing. Whenever Robocop is like out fighting crime in an exterior city set, there's always a strip club present in like every like shot where crime is happening. And there's just like kind of like every time a crime is happening, there's like sex nearby. And I think that's like Verhoeven definitely like commenting on like, the male power dynamics, like definitely fueled in part by sex.
And I thought he did a great job in this because sometimes we've watched so many films where you're like, I think the filmmaker thinks they're making like satire about sexism, but they're just being super fucking sexist and gross. And this to me hit the tone really well. And I think because it was weaved throughout, like you said, it closes with him like cowboy style grabbing his gun, and yeah, it all hit right for me. And there's the moment right before, what's his name? He's not Dick Jones. He's the other guy that Dick Jones is.
Miguel Ferrer.
Bob Morton.
Bob, yeah.
Bob Morton. Bob Morton's like, Robocop's out on the scene doing great. Bob Morton's just got this promotion and he's doing coke with these two women. And the women are like, we love your new title. Like, you're whatever his. I was going to say
vice president. There's something about it.
There's some, yes. And they're like, God, you girls are great. I'd love to be with intelligent women. And they're just doing like coke. She's like putting the coke on her tits. And like, it's all just like this power stuff. But there's something about it that just feels like maybe it's the surveillance stuff or something. It never feels gross. It feels like great satire. And then Bodecker comes in and he's like, get out, bitches. Like, bye bitches, get out. And then there was another moment too where it was like about women being referred to as like these bitches, and like it was just like all of it tied in. But as you were saying your point, Mike, about the slinging gunshot at the end, like that, I'm kind of like, oh, I see it. I see what's in this film, the potential for it, and it's very smart.
I also haven't seen the RoboCop remake that I think was like 2014. Mike, have you seen that one? Is that one any good?
It is garbage. It is made by people who clearly didn't understand the original. And the lead actor, whose name escapes me, gives a performance that is like just so, like, even for RoboCop, like one note and boring.
Who was it? Was that Carl Urban?
No.
Oh, no,
Carl
Joel.
Urban.
It was Joel Kinnaman. That's right,
I
that
don't
dude
know
from The
that
Killing.
person.
But yeah, if you worked on the movie or made it, hey, good work,
Did you two have anything else you wanted to hit before we go to the awards?
I want to highlight the club scene. There's a moment where RoboCop, he's starting to kind of, I feel like we barely scratched the plot, but there's just so much happening in it. But there's a moment where he kind of starts to remember dreams and things from his past life as Murphy. And he starts to kind of figure out who killed him. And so he figures out that Boddicker is the one that killed him. And he tracks down one of his accomplices at a nightclub. And this is the most 1980s fucking nightclub I've ever seen, in the most delightful way. It's worth watching just that scene over and over again and kind of like pointing out all the things that are happening in the background. There's a kind of, I think seems to be a Verhoeven trademark. You can see continued on in movies like Total Recall, where there's a POV shot and just naked women with their breasts out, just kind of like playing to the camera. Like why is this woman naked inside of a nightclub? Everyone else is clothed. And then the moment where he finally finds Boddicker's accomplice, and the accomplice pulls a gun, and RoboCop smacks it out of his hand, and and the gun flies out of the scene. Cut to some like 80s surfer SoCal guy like catches the gun midair and is like, all right. It's just like so fucking silly. I love it so much. But I think it also, like, it just kind of goes and I'll bring it back to something of value. That is kind of emblematic of RoboCop's version of policing. He shows up, he causes chaos and violence, and then he leaves. The very first crime you see him go on is someone is holding up a convenience store. RoboCop shows up, causes innumerable damages to the actual property, shoots the man to death. He flies into a soda refrigerator, and then RoboCop just says, like, have a good night, and turns around and leaves. He doesn't even like do anything with the body. When he stops these two guys from raping a woman, he shoots a guy's dick off. The other guy's just standing there. And then the woman is like clearly traumatized, freaking out. She runs over to RoboCop and hugs him, like basically being like, thank you. Can you take me somewhere safe? And RoboCop just says, I'll call a rape crisis hotline, and walks away, leaving the woman there with one of the guys who's still not injured at all. He's like, he's fully capable of harming her. Like but that's like the corporation's dream of policing, is just put a deadly weapon out there, cause violence and chaos, and then leave and then collect the profits.
Right. And as we know, police don't stop crimes. They're just there when they happen. Like, there's no prevention there, and make things worse and make the problem worse. And we see a lot of videos of, constantly of that happening in New York, where they just show up and make things worse and increase violence on the scene rather than do any de-escalation. It does. I'm glad you brought it back there, because I want to make sure we really hit the AI of it all. And just like, we talked about the robots but like, it's just really wild to be like, this is not sci-fi. This is legitimately, we will have these machines on the street that will be armed eventually. Like, and it's really terrifying. I know that there's movements, and there's a lot of grassroots organizing and protest work, which clearly worked to put the dogs in the pound the first time, but they're back out. And I don't know if I have a point about that, but just other than to say, like, it's terrifying and very real.
Do you think if they put like little floppy like dog ears onto the Digidog, it would be like more palatable to you?
Fool me once.
If
If
they put floppy
it might
ears
get me
and
once.
googly eyes on Digidog.
My initial response was, "Aw."
Riv, you mentioned that cops don't stop crime. I also want to add they also don't solve crime. Cops solve less than 1% of crime nationally. They also steal money through asset forfeiture. They are a criminal organization across the country with syndicates in each major city. They are literally descendants of the Ku Klux Klans, the police. I just wanted to get all that in because I hate the cops.
That is, I think, important for people to keep in mind that cops actually don't solve anything, they don't make anything better. They only exacerbate already dangerous situations. And I think this is incredibly important right now because, you know, we came out of 2020 with a real sense that there might be some sort of like legitimate police reform or, you know, the start taking the steps to some sort of abolition. And now it's 3 years out and we're seeing that, oh no, everyone's answer is actually more cops, is robot cops, is building a cop city in Atlanta. It's the answer to all of our problems. And that's something they hit in the beginning at the first board meeting when they say, you know, all public services have been cut except for the police. It's like, well, that's not a public service. That's enforcement. That is state violence.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I mean, I still do feel I do have the complicated feelings where I think this film hits on a little bit is that feeling of like the human beings who become the officers who are in this system and are, you know, there's no going on strike. For me personally, like part of my abolition is that I think officers will have to leave the force or have to have some sort of awakening where they also leave. I know a lot of officers, like I don't necessarily think that there's not a complexity in that human experience. And I think part of bringing in robots in this part is to just like diminish that, even to really just like get rid of that even like human possibility. You know, it's even scary. It's just like, let's get rid of even the remote human possibility, because that's even fucking, it's bad now, but like with robots in place, it's going to be fucking horrific.
All right, well, I think it's time for us to get to the awards for this movie. Mike, the first award we hand out is a point with a view. This goes to the character with the best politics in the movie. Not a lot to choose from, but...
Not a lot to choose from at all. And I think pretty much everyone in this movie is corrupt or an unwitting accomplice to the system, except for the gas station attendant who doesn't say a single word, and he's just studying plane geometry in his little booth.
Oh, yeah.
So why not that guy?
I think that's good.
So our next award is this one. This one also will be hard because there's so many. Despicable You. It goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie.
This probably has to be Dick Jones, the CEO at Omnicorp, just because he's collaborating with Boddicker, so he's like collaborating with this crime syndicate. He's trying to push the privatization of cops onto Detroit. He's a murderer. He's a liar. He's a corporate CEO. I mean, I don't think it gets worse than him in this movie.
Yeah, it's got to be Dick. I think he's like very successfully until the very end of the movie, like running a like top down, like vertically integrated, like every kind of evil you can do as a corporation. Like he's, privatizing public services. He's causing crime in order to put his robots on the street to stop the crime. Mm-hmm. He is literally about another looming threat throughout the entire movie is the building of Delta City, which is like this kind of gentrification effort where they're going to turn Detroit into a like privately corporate owned like city. And like, so like he's basically just doing everything an evil corporation can.
Special mention to Bob Morton, because he tried real hard to take Dick out. He didn't quite make it.
Yeah, Bob Morton also a pretty gross dude. And then our final award is A Star is Scorned. This goes to the supporting character that this movie should actually be about.
Does Boddicker count? I mean, I guess he's kind of the villain, but I would love to just see more about him.
Oh, yeah. to see all the funnies him and his crew are having on the road.
Yeah. Just some road trip buddy comedy. Let's do Magic Mike XXL, but with Boddicker in the game.
I'm here for it. Yeah, absolutely. And with all those, give us more of those. I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, I definitely could go to both the woman with her tits out or the nerdy college student. But I also think it could either be the two women in that scene with Bob Morton, because I thought they were just brilliant. Or there's something about like his little shitty little son in front of the TV. I want to know what that little shit's up to.
He did seem like a shitty little son.
I'm interested. I would want to see the story of the Omni executive who gets wasted by Ed 209 in the first boardroom meeting. Just like a short film about him being like, today's going to be the day I ask for my big promotion. And just follow it. Goodbye, dear. I love you. I love you too, honey. I think this will be the day that you get that big promotion. Thanks, sweetheart. And then just gets absolutely annihilated by Ed 209 in the boardroom.
I don't know if this was a joke or not, or meant to be like a laugh line, but this rewatch around, I like guffawed at the end of that scene when the guy gets just destroyed by Ed 209 and he's lying riddled with bullet holes, bleeding all over the model of Delta City, clearly dead. And there's like a beat of silence, and then somebody's like, "Somebody call a paramedic."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we're in any rush. The guy's dead.
All right. Well, that is it for the awards. For our listeners, if you have any ideas for new awards, you can email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
So before we wrap this up, and this was such a gift that keeps on giving, this film. So thank you for this. We like to discuss with our guests, as you know, how you strive in your personal life to practice your values as an anti-capitalist in whatever way that looks like for you.
You know, I thought about this a lot, knowing this was coming, and I don't think I really had a good answer. But I think like socialism in America is far off and unlikely as much as we want it. And so I really believe that you kind of have to create your little socialism like within your own life and your own circles. So I kind of just try to make choices that I really like I don't buy anything from Amazon. I haven't bought anything from Amazon in years because not that I think I'm personally taking money out of Jeff Bezos' wallet, but I just don't want that. I don't eat, I limit my intake of meat. I love meat, but like I believe that like factory farming is both a capitalist crime and a environmental crime. So I try not to eat a lot of meat. I don't use self-checkouts because I believe that self-checkouts are like, replacing human labor in a way that is unhealthy and bad. Like there's just like a lot of, I don't have a car. I committed like a few years ago, like I was just, aided by the pandemic. I just was like, I don't like driving. I hate cars. I think public transportation should be used more. And so like, I just kind of like make a lot of little choices like that. And then beyond that, as people in the entertainment industry, that, money is few and far between. So when I have money, I try to financially support, not only like people in my life, but also like organizations, mutual aid organizations. Solidarity and Snacks is one that I think you guys have heard of that I really love to donate to. And then if you're, hearing this and you're interested in supporting people during the WGA strike, the Entertainment Community Fund is a place you can go to donate some money. It doesn't go to the writers. It goes to other people, like people that work in production, actors, people that are also struggling because of work stoppages right now. And they offer like emergency financial aid and other services to people that work in the entertainment industry that are also affected by the strike. So that's there's that. Yeah, I don't know. Is that a good answer?
Those were all great answers. That was lovely. Thank you for sharing all that with us. It's a lot of it is just a lot of little choices that we're making in our own individual lives. So
and also talk about it. Tell people like don't be a preachy little dick about it, but like just talk about it. Tell people why you do the things you do. Don't be annoying. Never be annoying, but yeah.
Mike, where can our audience find you if they would like to?
You can find me. Go to Airbuds Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. That's my basketball podcast with comedians Peter Moses and Jamel Johnson, two very funny people, funnier than me. And we've been called the Democratic Socialist Basketball Podcast. So if you like the values on this podcast, you might like what we talk about there. But yeah, and other than that, I don't know. Yeah, don't find me anywhere.
Wow, great. Ever the great self-promoter. Mike, it was so good to see you.
Find me coming back on this podcast eventually to do Gremlins 2 for real.
Yes.
yeah.
What listeners don't know is back in the day when this was just a little glimmer in Frank and Riv's eye, this podcast, I was one of the test episodes you did, and I made you guys watch Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make Frank watch it again. So yeah.
I loved it.
I'm
down.
I wasn't in the right headspace for our first watch. I am excited to do it at some point, and we will have you back. Mike, thank you so much for being here. We love you. We miss you. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Love you guys too. Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you've been enjoying the show, please consider becoming a supporter. Again, you can find all of that info at mvcpod.com.
For next week's movie, we'll be watching Greta Gerwig's adaptation of the Mattel Toy Company product, Barbie. So get out there and get a ticket.
They probably won't let you in without one. Thank you all so much. We'll see you later.
Bye. We're sneaking, I guess.
Let's all go